What is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going over my top 5 mid-round busts for the 2022 fantasy football season. Inside of today's video, I'll be going in depth into each of these top 5 busts, as well as explaining into why I believe each of these players will end up as a bust. But before we could get on into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help us out a ton. And if you would like to follow me on Twitter, please do so at Notorious FNTSY. So without further ado, let's get into my top 5 mid-round busts. We'll begin with the first player, but real quick, I just want to set kind of parameters for today's video. The mid-round bust tag is a player that I believe is going to be a bust, a player that I believe is going to be overdrafted and not going to be finishing that high at their position in the middle rounds. And the middle rounds for me are rounds 4 through 8. Some people disagree. They say the mid rounds is rounds 5 through 10. There's definitely different parameters for different people, but for the purposes of today's video, all of these players that I consider to be mid-round busts are going from rounds 4 through 8. So we'll begin with my first pick, and that is going to be Patrick Mahomes, quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, current ADP quarterback number 2 off of the board, pick 40.1. Now, when I say this, some people are going to get annoyed. They're going to think that, Nick, you're fucking crazy. Just because Patrick Mahomes lost Tyreek Hill doesn't mean that his career is going to go down in the dumps. That doesn't mean that he is going to have a bad 2022 fantasy football season. And I completely agree with your take. I completely agree that I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be just fine and dandy without Tyreek Hill. My issue is where he is being taken right now in drafts. Quarterback 2, pick 40.1. Now, could Patrick Mahomes be the number 1 quarterback in all of fantasy football at the end of the season? 100%. He definitely could be. But is he worth pick 40.1? To me, no. Because I personally believe that there is a top 5 at the quarterback position, and I am fine with any of those top 5 quarterbacks, right? I'm fine with Pat Mahomes. I'm fine with Josh Allen. I am fine with drafting Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, but I want to be drafting those quarterbacks not necessarily inside of the top 40. I want to wait until the 5th, the 6th round to get that quarterback, and if they aren't going to be there, then I am fine passing up on them for another quarterback that could be going in that range. So again, I'm not here to derail Patrick Mahomes. All I'm saying is I would rather wait another round or 2 and take Kyler Murray, who I see having basically identical upside at the end of the season in terms of fantasy football. I just don't feel comfortable taking Patrick Mahomes. Now, if Josh Allen was going in this exact same spot, or Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, I would say the exact same thing. And that's why I'm kind of not low on Josh Allen, because I think Josh Allen is going to be the number 1 quarterback at the end of the season, but he is just going so fucking high in drafts that I find it absolutely ridiculous that people actually want to be taking him in the 2nd or 3rd round, because I don't think any quarterback is worth that price, especially when I feel as though any of those guys in the top 5 can do it. So, like I'm saying here, I'm not slandering Patrick Mahomes. I think Patrick Mahomes could have an excellent season. And I'm going to give you guys some reasons as to why I think Mahomes is going to have a great season. But just where he is going right now, the price is just too high for me. And if you guys have any questions about this down below in the comment section, if maybe I didn't explain it thoroughly enough, let me know, because I would definitely want you guys to understand what I'm saying. Again, I don't dislike Patrick Mahomes. In 2021, in 17 games played, he finished as the quarterback 4 on the season, quarterback number 5 in points per game. He had 658 passing attempts, 38.7 per game, ranking 3rd at quarterback, 4,839 passing yards, 284.6 per game, ranking 4th, 66.3% completion percentage, 37 passing touchdowns at a 5.6% rate, which is pretty good. Typically for quarterbacks, we're looking around that 5% rate. If they throw it like an 8% rate, you're like, wow, that's crazy. Things are going to go back down to earth. If they throw it like a 4% rate, you're thinking, oh, maybe next year it goes back up to 5%. So 5.6, pretty normal. Nothing crazy for Patrick Mahomes. 37 passing touchdowns, again, ranking 4th at quarterback. 13 INTs. He had 66 carries, 8th. 381 rushing yards, 6th, and 2 rushing touchdowns, 14th at quarterback. Patrick Mahomes is pretty interesting because you know that when in the playoffs, right, when the games really matter, when push comes to shove, when if they lose this game, their ass is grass, then Patrick Mahomes is going to be a lot more comfortable with running the ball. Personally believe that during the regular season, he is not trying to put that risk, right? Not take that risk of running out there and getting absolutely hit sticked by a linebacker, right? He doesn't want to do that. So that's why in the regular season, he only rushes like 66 times. And in the playoffs, you see him rush the ball a little bit more. Now, again, there's no concern with rushing upside. There's no concern about the passing volume for Patrick Mahomes in 2022. This guy, like I said, could easily be the number one quarterback. I don't have him ranked there, but I wouldn't be surprised. But again, based upon where he is going right now, I am just not comfortable taking that shot. I would rather wait another round or two and then take a Lamar Jackson, a Kyler Murray, one of those guys who I think has the exact same upside to be the number one quarterback in fantasy, and they are going a round or two later. So again, with the philosophy of understanding why I believe Patrick Mahomes is going to be a bust, it's not because he's a shit player. It's not because Tyreek Hill is gone. It's not because of the wide receivers that are on his team. It is because he is just going too early for me, and I think based upon where he is going, could make him a bust, right? If he's not the number 2 quarterback or better, then he's a bust in my book. So for that and where he's going, I just don't feel comfortable taking Patrick Mahomes early on in drafts. I really look to hammer in on the running back wide receiver position. If you're a little bit savvy, you want to go tight end, that's fine as well. But early on, I'm looking clear away from a quarterback in a one quarterback league. Superflex leagues, I made a video 2 days in a row talking about Superflex. So the Superflex draft strategy is severely different, right? In that kind of league, I'm fine taking Mahomes as the quarterback number 2. So next up, we move to a wide receiver, and that is going to be DK Metcalf, wide receiver of the Seattle Seahawks. ADP currently wide receiver number 23 off the board, pick 48.0. In 2021, DK Metcalf played in 17 total games, finishing as the wide receiver number 12 in half PPR and the wide receiver number 19 in half PPR points per game, tied with the man who just got a fat fucking contract in Hunter Renfrow. 129 targets, 7.6 per game, ranking 14th. 75 receptions, 4.4 per game, 25th. 967 receiving yards, 56.9 per game, ranking 25th. And 12 total touchdowns, 5th at wide receiver. DK Metcalf is a clear, talented wide receiver. This dude is a fucking athletic freak. He looks like he was, you know, those Greek god statues you see in the history books when you were back in high school, middle school, elementary school? That's basically what DK Metcalf looks like, right? He was chiseled out of stone. He is this amazing player, terrific player, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, in my opinion. So, Nick, why do you think he's going to be a bust? It's because of the situation that he is in. This situation in Seattle is fucking atrocious. It is either going to be Mr. Horsecock Drew Lock or Geno Smith as the starting quarterback. Nick, maybe Baker Mayfield could be the starting quarterback. If Baker gets traded to Seattle, they're still probably going to be bad, but then I'll be comfortable taking Metcalf because you know what? I think Baker is getting so heavily slandered, drug maybe is the correct word, through the mud. For no fucking reason. He was hurt last year. He might not be a top 12 quarterback in the NFL. He's not. I'm not going to say that. But he definitely should be a starter in the NFL. So we'll get to that with the next player who's on the Cleveland Browns that we'll be talking about. But DK Metcalf, for me, it's just the quarterback situation and the fact that Metcalf was never even consistent with Russell Wilson because his number 2 on the team, the 1A, 1B scenario, is Metcalf and Lockett. And Lockett is just so good that he takes up a certain amount of the offense, and it kind of just screws over Metcalf, right? When Metcalf is on fire, Lockett's typically in the corner just watching like, it is what it is. And then Lockett has a bad game, Metcalf goes off. Same thing in the reverse. Lockett has a great game. Metcalf is kind of fucking you in the ass in the corner with your fantasy football roster, right? He's not helping you at all. So now you go from Russell Wilson to Drew Lock or Geno Smith, and maybe, just maybe, now that changes and they're both more consistent, but I highly doubt that because Russell Wilson's up here and Lockett and Geno Smith are like down here in the dumps, right? So at the end of the day, with Metcalf, it has nothing to do with his skill set. It has everything to do with the team, and Pete Carroll also isn't someone who's just going to be forcing the rock deep down the field when they're losing. Pete Carroll is fine just running the rock a million times. Pete Carroll knows how to do 2 things. It's chew bubblegum aggressively on the sideline. Like, they cut him and he's just absolutely munching on some gum. And the other thing is run the rock. And they've got Rashad Penny. They've got Kenneth Walker. Who knows about Chris Carson, but they at least have a solid 1-2 punch there. I think Rashad Penny's going to get a lot more time, but that's for another video. But DK Metcalf, not the best situation. So for me, I understand that the situation is baked into the ADP, but would you be surprised if he finished outside the top 24? Right now he's going as wide receiver 23 on Underdog Fantasy. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I don't have very much DK Metcalf ownership in best ball. In redraft leagues, I don't think I'm going to be drafting DK Metcalf at all. I just don't feel comfortable at all right now. Again, very talented player. DK, if you're watching this video, I don't think you're a shit ball player, right? I know you're really good, but just a really bad situation, as if DK Metcalf's watching this video. So before we move on into my third of 5 busts inside of the mid-rounds of fantasy drafts right now, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor of today's video, and that is Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the single best place to play fantasy football this summer. Underdog offers the Best Ball Mania 3 tournament that has $10 million in total prize money. All you got to do is draft your team, and that's it. There's no waivers, no trades, or in-season management. Underdog automatically gives you the best score each and every single week from your lineups. You don't even have to go in and edit your lineup every week. You can just draft it and forget about it, and then come back in January, and you might have a boatload of money, or maybe you just watch it every single week. That's fun as well. Either way, you don't have to have any in-season management. The computer automatically gives you guys the best score every single week. My favorite part about fantasy football is the draft. I love doing fantasy football drafts. It's super fun, but now all I got to do is draft. I don't have to think about getting Joe from accounting calling me up on the phone trying to make a trade all the time. I don't have to worry about the waivers on Tuesday, which is just a struggle if you're in a lot of leagues. You don't have to worry about that. You just draft the team, and then you can forget about it, and you can win a lot of money. And you might be thinking, Nick, why would I want to draft in June? I want to draft in August, right? August is fantasy football time. Well, last year's Best Ball Mania champion drafted the winner in June, so there really is no need to wait, and you can join and draft now. Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100 when you sign up using promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, and that is good for 4 entries. 4 entries into the Best Ball Mania 3 tournament. Head on over to UnderdogFantasy.com or in the App Store, or just click on the link in the video description, probably also in the pinned comment down below, and sign up using promo code Awesemo today. Back on into it, I did give you guys a little bit of a teaser before. My next player is on the Cleveland Browns, and that is going to be Amari Cooper, wide receiver of the Cleveland Browns, ADP, wide receiver 27, pick 55.4. Now, just like with DK Metcalf, there is nothing wrong with Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper's a great player. Didn't have the greatest of years last year in Dallas, right? Plays in 15 games, wide receiver 27.5 PPR, wide receiver 27.5 PPR points per game, tied with DJ Moore. He had 103 targets, 6.9 per game. Very nice. I like 6.96. Haha. Number 32 wide receiver, 68 receptions. One off of being very funny with 69 again. 4.5 per game. Number 30 at wide receiver. 865 receiving yards, 57.7 per game. 30th at wide receiver. And 8 total touchdowns, 13th at wide receiver. So Cooper didn't have his best season, but he also wasn't awful. You definitely would have considered him to be a bust last year. Now he's going at wide receiver 27, which is exactly where he finished last year, so not super unfair, but he goes from the Dallas Cowboys to the Cleveland Browns. Now, if there was no Deshaun Watson situation, and it was Amari Cooper and Deshaun Watson for 17 potential games, then Amari Cooper might be a top 5 wide receiver because of how good Deshaun Watson is. But that is not going to be the case this season. Now, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not with the NFL, so I don't know exactly how much the NFL is going to strike down on Deshaun Watson. But would it surprise you right now, today is June 12th, if Deshaun Watson was suspended for the whole season? Would that surprise you? Because for me, I'm thinking he's getting at least 8 or 9 games, and the maximum could be the whole season. So if you draft Amari Cooper and you think, oh, it's going to be the lower suspension, it's going to be 8 games, then you have 8 games. It's not going to be Baker, right? Again, I talked about Baker. I kind of like Baker. It's going to be 8 fucking games of Jacoby Brissett. 8 games of Jacoby Brissett, and you are drafting Jacoby Brissett's number 1 receiver at wide receiver 27. That seems absurd to me. Now, I don't think Jacoby Brissett sucks, but he's not very good. I mean, he's not what you're ideally looking for in a quarterback with Amari Cooper, who's been kind of inconsistent. So with those inconsistencies and with a humongous downgrade from Dickie Dak Prescott to Jacoby Brissett for potentially the whole season, things are looking bad for Cooper, and the season hasn't even started yet. This is just a really bad situation to be in, and I feel like people still haven't shifted him down far enough for the real understanding that we could be without Deshaun Watson for the whole season. Now, again, am I saying that is 100% going to be the truth? No, I don't know. But I would not be surprised if it was the whole season, and even 8 games of Jacoby Brissett is bad enough for me to just completely stay the fuck away from Amari Cooper. Next up, we'll move to another Kansas City Chief, and that is going to be Mr. Corvette, JuJu Smith-Schuster, wide receiver of the Kansas City Chiefs. Current ADP, wide receiver 29, pick 57.2 off of the board. In 2021, JuJu only played in 5 games, finishing as wide receiver 137.5 PPR, and wide receiver number 90.5 PPR points per game, tied with Nick Westbrook, E. Cain, Laquan Treadwell, and Josh Reynolds. He had 28 targets, 5.6 per game, 119th at wide receiver, 15 receptions, 3 per game, 125th, 129 receiving yards, 125th at wide receiver, and 1 total touchdown, ranking 108th. Now, that wasn't the best season out of JuJu. Obviously, only plays 5 games. You can look back, hop on in the time machine, and go back to a time where JuJu was looking like, wow, this guy is the second in command. He's going to take over for Antonio Brown. This guy is the future of the NFL at the wide receiver position. He really looked like he was going to be one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League year in and year out, and he had such a likable brand that he was just getting elevated to the mountain tops of the NFL. And then things don't really go his way, right? More recently. Now, he moves from Pittsburgh to Kansas City, which makes sense, right? He moves to a spot where he could be the number 1 wide receiver. But my concern with JuJu Smith-Schuster is that where we are drafting him, we have to assume he is the number 1 guy. And I am still not 100% sure that he is going to be the number 1 target on the team. And I would not be surprised if the number 1 target on the team didn't even play wide receiver and was actually the tight end named Travis Kelce, because Travis Kelce has that connection with Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes was feeding Travis Kelce the rock while Tyreek fucking Hill was there. So you better believe with JuJu and these other ragtag wide receiver group that Travis Kelce is still going to be eating a hefty meal like Ezekiel Elliott on Thanksgiving. Right now, the wide receiver core for the Chiefs goes as follows. They've got JuJu, obviously. They have Mecole Hardman. They have Marquez Valdes-Scantling, MVS. They have my boy, Flash, savior of the universe, Josh Gordon. They have Sky Moore, who they just drafted. They brought in Justin Ross after the draft, and Justin Ross, while he had a lot of health issues in college, cleared him to play. Like, he could be the number 1 receiver on the team. There's other names too. They've got Justin Watson, Doris Fountain, Cornell Powell. They have other guys too, but in reality, MVS is no schlub. Mecole Hardman hasn't put it together, but now he's going to be given that chance. They draft Sky Moore. They bring in Justin Ross. I am just not sure that JuJu is the guy. And again, where you're drafting JuJu, you're drafting him to be the guy. You're drafting him to be the number 1 receiver. You're drafting him to be the heir to the throne from Tyreek Hill. They were never on the same team, but you get what I'm saying. The passing of the metaphorical torch, the passing of the baton from Tyreek to JuJu. That's what you want if you are drafting JuJu Smith-Schuster as the wide receiver 29. Now, can he fucking do it? Can he be a top 5 wide receiver? I think so. I do. But the problem is, I wouldn't be surprised if multiple of his teammates outscore him. I wouldn't be surprised at all, and I don't think Mr. Patrick Mahomes is going to necessarily just key in on JuJu like he did with Tyreek Hill. I think he's going to spread the ball around. I think all of these wide receivers have the potential to be complete and utter unmitigated disaster busts because you never have any idea which you want to be starting any given week. Because Pat Mahomes just throwing the ball out so evenly to everyone. He's just throwing it to whoever's open. And that could be a humongous issue. So right now, in June, things could change by August. Maybe someone gets hurt on the Kansas City Chiefs. Knock on wood, I don't root for injuries. But maybe someone gets hurt, and then it's like, oh, now I feel really comfortable with JuJu. Or maybe JuJu gets hurt again, knock on wood. I'm not rooting for fucking JuJu to get hurt. But if he did, then maybe there's another wide receiver that moves up slightly in ADP, but now there's less competition. I'm all in on this certain receiver, right? But right now in June, when we're so far away from the season, I don't think flag planting on any player on this Chiefs roster besides Travis Kelce, or maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire because he goes so late, is a little bit crazy to me. So right now, JuJu Smith-Schuster is pretty much off my board, and I think he's going to probably end up as a bust because I just don't think he's the clear number one option there, and I really think Mahomes is going to be spreading the ball around a lot this season. Final player here, we got Deandre Hopkins, wide receiver of the Arizona Cardinals. Current ADP wide receiver 37 off of the board, pick 74. 0.9. If you guys didn't notice throughout this whole video, we started with pick 40.1 and we're closing out the video with pick 74.9. So we are going up through the rounds, right? Starting from round 4 all the way up. So DeAndre Hopkins is one of the best receivers in the NFL. So Nick, why are you hating on DeAndre Hopkins? It's because of the suspension. It's because I don't want to fucking draft a player that early. I understand it's not the early rounds, the mid rounds, but that highly. I don't want to be drafting him where he's going at pick 74.9 when I know for sure he is missing a bunch of games because he is suspended. Why would I draft a player that is doing that? Now, if DeAndre Hopkins keeps falling and he's not like pick 100, then I'm fine paying that price, right? You take him, you dribble him around, throw him onto the IR and pick up another player. I'm fine drafting DeAndre Hopkins in that situation. But where he's going right now, I don't feel comfortable. They bring in Hollywood Brown for a reason. Now, is Hollywood Brown going to become the alpha wide receiver number 1 in this offense and completely derail DeAndre Hopkins? No, but DeAndre Hopkins had virtually zero competition in the past. He had none. Zilch. No competition at all. But now they have Hollywood Brown. Now Zach Ertz is ascending. This looks bad for DeAndre Hopkins, right? Last year in 2021, he plays in 10 games because he gets banged up. Wide receiver, 43.5 PPR, 18.5 PPR points per game. He has 63 targets, 6.3 per game, 64th at wide receiver, 42 receptions, 4.2 per game, 60th at wide receiver, 572 receiving yards, 52nd at wide receiver, and 8 total touchdowns, 13th at wide receiver. Now, the only way where I see DeAndre Hopkins not being a bust, if he scores like 12 touchdowns, because I think that's possible, but with the suspension, with the new additions to the team, how many touchdowns James Conner was scoring, I'm just worried. And I understand the argument will be made that, Nick, DeAndre Hopkins is the most talented receiver on the team. Even with the suspension, you got to take him because he's going around guys in the draft that are not as talented as DeAndre Hopkins. And I understand that argument. But when you're drafting those guys around him, they could play 17 games, and they could finish higher on the season than DeAndre Hopkins, even in terms of points per game. So don't fall into the trap of just because his name is DeAndre Hopkins that you need to draft him even though he's suspended. I don't like drafting suspended players, especially if they're suspended for as much time as DeAndre Hopkins. So right now, I am steering away from DeAndre Hopkins. So let me know down below in the comment section what you guys thought about today's video. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree on these players? Let me know down below. I would really appreciate that a ton. I love talking to you guys in the comment section. Please, again, make sure if you guys did end up enjoying to hit that subscribe button if you're new. If you're not new, make sure to hit that like button and check out Underdog Fantasy, the sponsor of today's video. Use promo code Awesemo, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. So if you deposit $100, that will give you an additional $100 into your account. I love you guys all so much. Hope you guys have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, guys, good boy.